Well folks, welcome back to the workshop. Today we have wee Makitas on for repair. This is the LS1018L Makita saw, and she needs a little bit of work. Obvious ones are lock lever for the miter angle and the handle, that's all missing. But there's a motor problem as well. Now this one doesn't look to have done an awful lot of work, but from where it's coming from, it probably has done quite a bit. Now these here are not precision saws, definitely not. There's not much accuracy even straight out of the box. They're fairly rough, but they do make a very good rough saw. Even the motors on them, quite durable. Even if the bearings totally collapse and fail, they're quite rugged and they can be just fixed up by changing the bearings. This one needs a little bit more work than that though, because it has done quite a bit by the sounds of it. She doesn't sound too healthy. I don't know what's going on there, but something ain't good anyway. Imagine it's going to be the gears. Now, like I say, these aren't all that accurate. Even the rails in them aren't the best. And just listen to that. Hear how it sticks. It's just not smooth. But they never are. They're more of a rough saw, and this has been doing fairly rough work. And I think that rough work has damaged these here gears, or the bevel gear at least. Hopefully not the gear on the armature. So we're going to strip it down and see if we can fix her up. And first things first, give it a wee clean, because it looks like it's been cutting more than just timber. Blow this down with the compressor first. See what I mean by what it's cutting? That's not off the saw, that's off whatever they were cutting, so they're using this. We're actually cutting aluminium. It's going to be fairly rough on them gears. Now, up here, this isn't a big deal. This can be changed with just taking out two wee screws underneath, and then the handle then just screws on. That's not a big deal. The rails, not much you can do about how rough they are. The only thing you can do is pop off this back cover and pull the head of the saw off the base and actually blow out the linear bearings inside, get rid of any debris that might be jamming them up. And one thing about these saws, or any miter saws, don't oil or grease these rails. If you put oil or grease on them, the grease is going to get into the linear bearings in here. What's going to happen then is as sawdust and debris falls on it, it's going to get rolled in, stuck to the bearings, and it's going to pack up on the back of the linear bearing. Whenever you get them jammed up then, you'll have no way of getting it out. So even if you take this rail out and blow it, the grease and grit and dust is going to be packed in inside the bearings. Air is just not going to move it out. Best thing to do is leave these here bone dry. If they do get clogged up with sawdust then, at least you can take these out and blow them out. But if there's grease in it, it's not going to do very much. So keep them dry. The main thing is up here. We're going to get off this motor section. We get the brushes out. We'll just pop the whole thing off. It's definitely seen work anyway. Brush is nearly completely gone. Same as that one. You can hear that play now. Two screws on top of the armature. That's what holds it on. Pull them out. Your armatures are just luffed out. And actually the main problem might actually be the bearing. Yeah, maybe not. Starting to fail, but it's not completely gone. Gears and the armature though, the teeth, ain't too bad. Might get away with that. Gear in here though, mightn't be as fortunate. Get rid of this. Some of this play might be down to the blade. There's a bit of play in that bush. That could be partly to do with what's wrong with us. We'll check these gears anyway. Now, luckily this is quite easy to work on. It's all quite modular. It's rattling. Get under here and see. So there's the gear. That is the problem. Here's all the metal from the gear teeth. It's all shaved off. See what I mean? That's not from what they're cutting. It's from the bevel gear itself. So that was gone. It's totally stripped out here actually. That can't be saved, we have to replace that. Luckily, because it is quite rugged, this armature isn't all that bad. It is worn, don't get me wrong, but it's not worn out. You'll get away with putting this gear onto a fresh one. Now it's not going to sound as smooth as silk. It's still a worn gear going onto a brand new one, so it will sound a wee bit rough for a while at least, but it will work. Now what we want to do is clean out this head and get rid of all the old grease, because it's all contaminated with these here gear teeth, the metal shavings. Clean this out now as well to make it easier and cleaner just to dismantle. I'll change these bearings as well. That one's not gone, but we'll still change it anyway. Circle it on the bearing. Hold it on, take that out, and press off that bearing, just clean up that plate. Right, clean this out now. also change this bearing as well. It's also not gone, but as well just change them all at the one time. This top one is a 6003 bearing. Bottom one is a 6001. That's her. Now this bevel gear assembly is put together just like the older LS1013. Don't think it's the same gear, mind you, but it's built the same kind of way. The difference is no bearing up here. Bearing's actually just relying on a bronze bushing inside of here, so I'll have to test that as well, make sure it's not worn out or gotten any bigger. This is gone. Doesn't look so bad this side. But this side here is all chewed up. That might have been something to do with that bearing as well. Make sure you don't lose your keyway. I'll also just change this bearing. It's not actually gone. But we'll just change it anyway, just in case. Could have got away with that, but just replaced it to be on the safe side. What is she? It's a CHL 6003 again. Right, so far we're on 3 bearings, €6 or €7 each. Now all we need is the bevel gear. Because of the long number here, it's an oddball Makita number. Generally get this JM number, and they're a cheaper Makita tool, which these things are. They're more of a budget, cheap and cheerful tool. Not that cheap and cheerful to buy, but the spare parts aren't all that expensive. So that's the number if you need them. Cost about €42 for this. So there's the gear. You can see the old one. It's been fairly well stripped out. Fitting, don't forget your keyway. Drops in there. Normally I have to press these on. But normally you can get them on to the keyway. No, don't even have to press it on, it'll slide on. Put your washer over that. And your C-clip to hold it all together. That's it. And also on the bush itself, it's nice and tight. That's not worn out at all, so we'll get away with that. Don't forget this circlip as well. Now, bit of grease. Make sure you have plenty on the gear itself. We'll get more grease in this whenever it's rebuilt, before we put the armature on. That's how good that bronze bush is still. Grease is getting stuck in the bottom. Some of it out to help this go on. Exactly that good a bronze bush, it hasn't worn at all. It's actually making a total seal and giving a compression. This one then, just for holding in the bearing. Now it's ready to go back on the saw. Also just put a little bit of extra grease on, make sure it's not dry. Make sure there's enough in there. Don't want to pack it out. You just want to have enough going around on side, so it's getting continuously moved around. If you put on too much, it's going to start cavitating. You'll hear a popping noise whenever you run the saw. If you hear it popping, take some of the grease out again. But that's it, bit ready. And this here just has to go back in, bolt it on. But it's easier to put this armature on whenever this is already on the saw, because otherwise when you're putting this on, you also have to support the armature. So just put this on first. Before I put this on, I'm actually going to clean these rails first, or the bearings at least, just to help free them up. that off. And the whole head can come off. And then outside of here, you see why they start to get stuff. But because this hasn't been oiled, this is just powder, dust. So an air compressor will help clean this all out. Pop that plate off as well. There's more in behind there. Now do you see how these tracks of bearings actually run just with the airline been blown across them? If this was full of oil or grease, they wouldn't shift at all with the airline. They'd be stuck. So don't be putting oil inside of here or on your rails at all. Now, before we rebuild this, we'll just replace this. Now, normally what happens here, this wee arm breaks, it normally snaps down here. Only a couple of euro to replace it. Pop out these two screws, and this here bar has a pin through it. Pull it forward and twist it round. That'll just come straight out. But this one doesn't actually seem to be broken. Problem with this one, it's just a wee bar. That's your lever there. Under that is this steel pin. So maybe somebody's already changed this and just didn't do it right. No, it is actually broken. That's the problem. So we replace that. Now these are only cheap. Only cost a couple of euro. They're dead easy to fit. Just drops down. Pull this lever forward. Twist it so the bar is resting on the plastic leg. And that's it. Put your plate back on. And you're done. That's the metal lock sorted. You can pull that now. This can rotate around. And if you let it go, this bar goes forward and locks in. I'm not 100% sure if this handle's missing or if they just removed it. A lot of people don't like the handle sticking out, especially if it's going into the back of a van or something, because a lot of the time somebody ends up standing on it and breaking it. So some people will eventually actually just unscrew it and remove it. All it's doing is just locking the miter anyway. So if you're only ever using 90 degrees or the set angles and you're not using it in between, a lot of people don't bother with it. This again, just all bolts back together. 4 socket heads onto here. Now what we do want to change here are these 2 washers, and they may not seem significant, but they are important. The smaller one was going against the bearing and then the back flange. So if that isn't in any way damaged, it'll actually give you a blade wobble. So replace that because that is a bit mangled. Stick a new one of those on. So your back flange goes on after that. So that's keeping your back flange square with the bearing. And after that then you have this one. And this is the bush to take it from a 16mm centre to a 30mm centre. This one here is obviously worn. That's where the blade's actually wobbling on it, or slack. So replace that as well to keep everything nice and square. You can go ahead of your blade. Your front flange. And your bolt. Stick your guard back on. Now this bolt here has a shoulder on it, so that when it's tight in the housing, but the actual plate is allowed to swing on it, so it's not actually holding this plate tight, just enough to hold it. And lastly, we can go ahead and finish off the motor. Put on your 2 bolts in for clamping it on. Don't forget your wee bush, a rubber sleeve on top of that bearing. And you can drop the motor section then on top of that. Lastly, a set of Makita brushes. These are CB 500s. Now, moment of truth. See what she sounds like. Is she going to be geary or not? Listen to that. Nearly sounds like a new saw again. Thought it was actually going to sound a little bit geary, but it doesn't sound geary at all. That's a new gear on an old gear and an armature that was worn, so armature still perfect. That there is going to do the job. I'm going to say that. That's a job well done. Now, on a new set of brushes, generally you will get a spark when it's actually braking. Shouldn't be sparking once she's running, maybe a little once she starts. But a spark when she's braking is not a problem. It's just the brake kicking on. But that is now ready to go. That is how you fix up a Makita LS1018L miter saw. It either has bad bearings or a stripped out gear. Fairly easy to do and not all that expensive either. So that all together, including the gears, the bearings, the wee lever down here, the wee steel bushes and everything, labour, VAT, that cost around €130 all together to get that up and running again. Well worth it, seeing as if we're €400 for the saw. Anyway folks, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Give us a wee like and a follow down below if you're liking the tool repair videos. Cheers.